Hi guys, I'm Matea and I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the Harlem Renaissance. So what was the Harlem Renaissance? Well, the Harlem Renaissance was a period of time where art, prose, poetry, music, and intellectualism was flourishing in the 1920s in New York City. Writers like Gwendolyn B. Bennett, who's a personal favorite of mine, and Langston Hughes, who's actually another favorite of mine, produced poetry that would go on to define the period of time and shape the American literary world. So, for some cultural context, the movement took place in the 1920s in Harlem, Manhattan. A great many social movements were actually happening at the very same time. The Black freedom struggle overall was marching forward as many African Americans moved from the South to the North, where they hoped to escape the intense, violent racism and strict segregation of post-Reconstruction era South. Some had their hopes fulfilled, and many didn't, as we know. The 1920s was taking America by storm as well, as many women were experiencing the beginning traces of the sexual liberation movement, and some were even granted the right to vote. The decade was roaring because of the social change that was happening on all fronts. The recent racial trauma endured by Black America caused many Black artists, writers, and poets to strive to create a national identity using their work as a vessel. So the first writer I want to talk about is Langston Hughes. He was born in Joplin, Missouri, and around 1921 he moved to New York to study at Columbia University, but only studied there for about a year. At one point after this, he spent time living in Paris and working in a kitchen. I think that Langston's wealth of experiences gave his writing a worldliness and an appreciation of jazz and blues, and that's influence is really apparent in his work. His poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers, displays his reverence for Black history and culture. The poem reads, I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. This poem is special in the way that it connects African heritage with Black American heritage. Like I said before, the writers of the Harlem Renaissance spent considerable amounts of time pondering Black American identity, and in this poem, Langston attempts to further validate Black American culture by associating and ascertaining that we, like everyone else, are people with a beautiful history. The next poet, who I'm very excited to talk about because she's one of my favorites, is Gwendolyn B. Bennett. Gwendolyn was an excellent student her entire life and was the first Black member of multiple cultural societies at her high school. She ended up studying fine arts at Columbia and the Pratt Institute and very quickly rose to prominence in New York's literary scene. Her poem, To a Dark Girl, is an emotionally tender acknowledgement of Black female pain and beauty all in one. The poem reads, I love you for your brownness and the rounded darkness of your breast. I love you for the breaking sadness in your voice and shadows where your wayward eyelids rest. Something of old forgotten queens lurks in the lithe abandon of your walk, and something of the shackled slave sobs in the rhythm of your talk. O little brown girl, born for sorrow's mate, keep all you have of queenliness, forgetting that you once were slave, and let your full lips laugh at fate. Here, Bennett legitimizes the very specific struggle Black women face in America, while also urging the reader, who is intended to be a Black girl, that she's beautiful for her features that may have been ridiculed or shamed in society. While Bennett was an intellectual powerhouse, her writing had a delicate nature to it, which I believed helped to redefine Black womanhood in the eyes of the Black community and in America in general. A quote that I think really summarizes not only the foundational literature but the entirety of the Harlem Renaissance is one from Langston's own essay entitled "The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain." It says, "We younger Negro artists who create now intend to express our individual dark-skinned selves without fear or shame. We know we are beautiful and ugly too." This quote is so perfect to me because it embodies how I feel the movement added to the Black literary world. Harlem Renaissance poets acknowledged the historically revered beauty of Blackness and all the ugliness too. They wrote of ancient cities and queens, and they also wrote about racial trauma, sadness, hate, and a history laced with violence and bigotry. The poetry that came out of the Harlem Renaissance is as beautiful and complex as the movement itself. Writers like Gwendolyn Bennett, Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and Countee Cullen aided to Black America's understanding of itself and America's understanding of us. And to finish out, I just wanted to say thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you feel like you learned a little bit. Have a nice day.